We have a picture.
Yay!
So technology absolutely failed us. You hold this for a second. I'm going to tell them to move over. Hello, that's
Hi.
Jack.
Sorry, everybody. We're having connection issues with YouTube for some reason, and all we did is move our phone 3 feet from where it was, and we have to disconnect our new mics because it did not like any of those things. So please jump over and join us here on the new live stream. So sorry about making you guys run around on the YouTube universe. And so
Only 2 people are there, so we'll see who joins. You know,
we'll hang on for a few minutes for more people to join us before we start cooking.
Yeah, we just give us a little credit for hanging in there because this has just been insane. I spent hundreds of dollars yesterday for microphones and to have the gimbal so that everything would be nice and steady. And what am I using? I am using my old junky Gorilla Pod. And we're just gonna get through this because she prepared all this food. I took a nap and she was been in here chopping and cleaning and everything, and it smells divine. And so I'm gonna turn this over to Jack. Thank you so much for joining us. This is 17 people and we are gonna proceed with, there you go, Jack.
Hi!
So tell us about what you're making, Jack.
So we're gonna make a Chinese eggplant stir fry that's very common in the Sichuan dish. Basically, this is my favorite way of cooking the.
I'm okay.
Uh,
I'm okay.
Cooking the Chinese eggplant. These are the pingdong eggplant, the most common one here.
Say that slower.
Pingdong.
Pingdong.
Pingtung.
Pingtung. Okay.
Spelled here, but in Chinese we call it Pingdong, which is a city in Taiwan where I'm from. So this is bred and created there. So we basically gather a bunch of stuff from the garden today. So we have some pre-chopped up Pingdong eggplant here.
And did you use the cut?
I used the roll cut method, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we also harvested some, these are garlic chive, fresh from the garden that I chopped up in little sections. And this is an unknown hot pepper that was given to me by a friend. So we were going to give it a little heat here.
Show me that pepper again.
This one.
Ah.
And it grows up like this.
Oh, it's a green one, but it's hot. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I believe it will probably ripen to a red pepper.
Okay.
And the other thing we have, we're gonna talk about Loofah. This is grown from the seed from Kaye's garden, late bloomer show 1.0. Loofah seed from there that we planted last summer. As soon as we moved in, this is one of the first seeds we planted because we wanted a piece of late bloomer show in our garden.
Yay!
And,
yay! Yay!
So we found this little guy. The young loofahs are the ones that taste better. And I'll show you, there's a trick that you have to do to test if it's edible. So we'll talk about that. And then fresh Thai basil from the garden also. This is an aromatic that we'll add at the end of the stir fry. This is our little extra touch. This is not usually added in Taiwan.
Aha.
And we pre-mixed our sauce. My personal sauce mix is using the Korean hot pepper paste, gochujang, and then I use also the black bean garlic paste.
Hold it a second. Okay. Can you hold the first one a second longer?
This is the Korean hot pepper paste.
Okay. And you just go to the Korean market for that?
Yeah, and a lot of the international or Asian market has it too. And this is the chili soybean sauce.
Okay.
This is some of the hot sauce.
Okay.
And they're the fermented soybean, fermented black bean. And then this is the Japanese sweet cooking wine.
Okay.
And if you're really Japanese food connoisseur, you'll know this is not the real deal, but this is close enough. And then I'll do fresh cracked pepper in the sauce and mix them all together. About 1 tablespoon, 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoon, and about a 1/4 cup of the wine, and a dash of the black pepper, and that's all the sauce that we need for that. And of course, we have additional stuff that is from the grocery store that I don't have, which is any onion chopped up into bite size, and some carrots to give it a little crunch to the dish. And this is also cut using the RollCut method. And this is tomatoes from Kaye's Late Bloomer 1.0 garden.
Hey, hold on a second. So those are the Boutingan tomatoes that I put in my freezer. That I put in my freezer how many years ago?
Maybe 2.
2 or 3 years ago, and never used. And you know, when you move out of an apartment, you got to clean out your freezer. And so I brought 2 or 3 frozen bags of pineapple guavas and those tomatoes and some Caribbean habanero peppers that I put in my freezer in probably 2014. So I wanted Jack to put them in this dish, some of them in this dish, so we'll see how that's gonna go. All right, so you've moved a bunch of stuff over to the cooking area, and then here we're gonna come back over here.
We're gonna do the rolling,
Yep.
the roll cut method with the carrots. This is used, and probably a lot of professional chefs will cringe when I do this, but it's conical shaped vegetables that you want to easily cut them into equal bite size and irregular shapes, so you have more surface area to absorb sauces and cooking time and stuff like that. But you know, a lot of times you cut this in half and then you cut this in half again to get the equal size of this end. But the rolling cut method is like this, and then so you establish a size here, and as you get bigger in the conical shape, your roll is a little more tight. So then you're cutting, they all appear to be about the same size, even though I'm not doing an additional cross cut, and I'm getting into the larger section of the carrot, as you can see, and they're still appearing to be about the same size. So that's the magic of the roll cut method. And it's a really quick way to cut up lengthy vegetables that you want to keep about the same size. And there you go. You see the carrots all cut about the same size, even though we started from a really skinny end to the fat end.
I have never done that or seen that, and I'm so glad to learn that finally.
So we'll do that with the eggplant also.
Okay.
And these are all harvested this afternoon.
So you wind up taking not even half of the true diameter of where you're at in the cut, in the vegetable.
Yeah, so it's all irregular shape, but they all end up about the same size. See?
No, Daryl, you don't have any bamboo growing, do you? Yet, anyway? Jack?
I do. I have the Taiwanese green bamboo, which is also called the giant timber bamboo here. And then another subspecies of that bamboo we're also growing. I can't remember the scientific name for it, but they're both very popular bamboo for bamboo shoot in Taiwan, where I'm from. And I was told my grandfather grew a huge grove of those giant timber bamboo, and the family will always wait and get really excited when he harvests the spring bamboo shoot to share with the family, because they're super sweet, super tender, and you can almost eat. You prepare them in a way that you then chill and serve it almost like a salad, and you don't even need seasoning. It's just that sweet and that tender.
Wow.
So now we're moving on to the loofah from from seed grown from Kaye's old garden. And I want to cover a topic that is not very commonly known, but anybody who eats cucumber, grows and eats cucumbers knows sometimes cucumber turn bitter in the summertime, and it's because it's got this complex compound called cucurbitacin. Cucurbitacin is the compound.
Tessin. Cucurbitacin or something?
And
okay.
It's the compound in cucurbits family, like squashes, cucumber, loofah,
Melon.
to protect the plant and the fruit from being eaten by herbivores. And this also could be created when the plant is experiencing drought or stress. So that's why, middle of summer when it's really dry, really hot, sometimes your cucumber turn bitter. There's ways that online that people extract that bitterness out, but it is a toxin. So it's advisable not to consume it if you know your cucumber is bitter. So one way for loofah is I always advise people to peel the loofah skin first, because some of the compound is in the skin, because that's where the animals take its first bite, the bugs take its first bite. So removing the skin will remove a lot of that compound already. And then what you do the next step is take a little piece and taste it. I'll give Kaye a little piece here. I do not taste any bitterness. It's like a very mild cucumber flavor. This is perfect for cooking. So we're gonna chop this up. And the good thing with, if you're not familiar with cooking with loofah, it's a very high hydration vegetable. So a lot of times if I have loofah in the dish, I don't need to add any chicken stock or water to the dish. Just this amount of loofah will give me a nice amount of moisture to the dish, so it will kind of stew itself. And we'll show you when it starts cooking.
Okay.
So we're all ready and prepped, so we can move over to the stove.
Okay.
Now I like to start with medium high. And we're cooking with olive oil, a local company here in Arizona called Queen Creek Olive Mill. And we almost always use their olive oil only because they're extra virgin, very healthy. So we'll use about a tablespoon of this to sweat the onions first, so they don't give you that spicy, hard bite when you're eating it. And then after that, we'll add in the carrots and the loofah, because carrots takes a little longer to cook to soften, so we'll add that next. And then the eggplant will go in, and the tomatoes will go in, and we'll let it stew a little bit, let the loofah do its thing to sweat out some juice to stew the dish. Then we will add the garlic chive, the hot pepper, to cook for a couple more minutes, and at that time we'll put in the sauce, and then everything will kind of just really marinate in the pan. And then about a minute before we serve the dish, we'll throw in the Thai basil.
Okay.
So this is about ready. Make sure we cover the bottom of the pan. It didn't heat up as much. So while we wait, if there's any questions, feel free to ask at this moment while we wait for the onion to start sweating.
Okay. Why don't I set the camera up here? Let's see. And Gina's pointing out that not all things that are bitter are toxic.
Yes.
This is more just in the cucurbit family.
Yes.
Okay.
Because there's an actual incident, and it happens in Taiwan too, in Asia. People got sick eating too much bitter loofah, too much bitter melon even. In France, which I never think the Western country will have this experience, because Western country don't really eat that much bitter stuff compared to Chinese. In France, there's a couple women that had squash soup that was a little bitter, and then they went home and they got sick. They got nausea, they started vomiting and diarrhea, and then a couple weeks later they have hair loss. So that's like an extreme case. There's very few deaths related to high consumption of these bitter cucurbits, but
Including which includes bitter melon.
yes.
I mean, bitter melon is an acquired taste, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's definitely an acquired taste, but we in Asia we like it. We like you mentioned, not all bitter things are considered toxic, but when you eat too much of it, there's a reason these plants produce that bitter compound to repel whatever animals trying to eat it, and bugs trying to eat it. That's their protective mechanism. So we just want to eat in moderation. But it is much safer if you're cutting up a few loofahs to taste test first, because I don't want people to start getting sick eating loofah, because I'm promoting eating loofah here. But it's a vegetable that we eat all the time in Asia.
Rob says he's grabbing his baby carrots out of the refrigerator to munch because you're making everyone hungry. And someone else asked why you don't have a channel, and she has made it very clear in other live streams and videos that I've done that she works a full-time job. She has this big garden, and she and her husband have a very active sporting lifestyle,
And traveling.
and traveling and an RVing. And if you start a channel, you're going to be spending, I would say, at least for, let's see, at least 20 or 30 hours a week on editing, just editing. Mm-hmm. And so,
and I tried. So the few handful of videos you see on my channel, each of them took me about 10 hours, and they're like maybe 3 or 5 minutes. The fish ones are easy. I just pair it with music. But when I did the chiltepin pepper one and even the parasitic wasp one, those took me a long time, because as you can see, I'm not as smooth as Kaye. It takes me a while to learn to speak really nicely on camera live. So when I'm recording myself and it's always just me, it takes a lot of tries. I had to re-record, make sure I'm pronouncing the stuff correctly and researching the information, make sure I'm giving out correct information.
but when I come to town, I get you on camera right away because I love watching you cook. So how long do you let the onions sweat?
So I like to sweat when about 80% of them start to look more like this. And at this stage, they're less spicy. So a lot of people that don't like to eat onion is because they have eaten onions that weren't properly sweated. And once you sweat and get rid of that spiciness, the onion is just sweet. So,
Point out a sweated piece of onion now. This one? Oh, wait.
This one and this one are pretty good. This piece and
So
this
I think
piece.
recipes will often say saute the onion till clear and just not burn it.
Yeah.
So I guess
that's
sweating
about
is the same as, okay.
And I may be totally using the wrong term.
That's okay.
I watch a lot of cooking shows and I try to retain the terminology in my brain, but sometimes I do use the wrong terminology, hence not a lot of videos from me.
I love her cow here. Where did you say you got your cow?
This cow is from an artist, and this horse, this is coasters we purchased from Ireland when we visited Ireland a few years ago on a business trip. So you can really smell the sweet onion now.
Mm-hmm. Did you actually use a sweet onion, or was this just a regular onion that you're making sweet by
You can use any.
any
I wouldn't recommend using red onion. Any of the white, yellow, sweet onion will work for this dish.
Okay.
So now we're putting in carrot and the loofah.
If you recognize, this is Gabrielle, right?
Yes, that's
So if you
Gabrielle's
recognize
bowl.
this berry bowl, I have one very similar to this. And on one of my many trips to Tucson, we went to a craft fair and I got to meet Gabrielle, who makes pottery. And she is the one that makes my late bloomer mug.
Yes.
And she
we have
has,
a collection of
Yes.
Gabrielle's mugs.
yes.
She makes these amazing.
She likes the ones with the, I mean, she makes the ones with the little
legs.
legs on them. They're so cool. My late bloomer mug does not have legs, but I do have one of her leg ones.
And she made one for my husband with Jeremy's name on it. This is a nice big mug.
Jeremy
mug.
is, suffice it to say, Jeremy's pretty obsessed with coffee. And
Yes.
he's a major craftsman. He has a workshop to die for. And he built this coffee bar in their new place. He built the coffee bar in their old place, but this is a new coffee bar. And while those onions are steaming, I'll show it to you. I forget what kind of wood this is. Do you remember? Okay, he could tell us.
I don't really remember.
But this is the
now.
natural split, or where they've
It's the
taken,
live edge.
this is the live edge of the wood. If you're a woodworker, you know what that means. They've just basically taken the bark off, and so it's uneven. He left it natural. This one, he has put an edge on. And then he has is it a CNC machine?
Yes, we have a CNC routing machine.
They have a CNC routing machine in the workshop. And so this was the color of the top of this piece of wood, just from natural wear and stain or whatever. And this says coffee, obviously. And he left that, and then he cut it down. It looks like it's about 1/4 of an inch all the way around this machine. Cut all of this out. And then he put coffee beans in here, and then he poured the whole thing flush and level with epoxy. I think it's epoxy, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Clear epoxy.
clear epoxy. And then, of course, he has all the gadgets. And he puts French cleats, and he can talk about this more when we see his workshop. But he uses French cleats so that you can literally hang these drawers, and the weight of what is in the drawer keeps it secure on the cleat, and you don't have to screw in everything. You can move things around, things can be adjustable, and I just love that. So there we go. I don't drink coffee either, but I love it when people are into their craft. Okay, now she has added the carrots and the loofah just for, I guess, a minute or so.
Yeah, and they have already started to cook, and then now we're adding the eggplants. And I usually go for 2.5 eggplants per person, because they do cook down quite small once they're heated and cooked. And this pretty purple color will turn into more like a grayish,
Kind of grayish, yeah.
grayish brown, not as pretty. There's ways you can retain that color if you do like a salad type style of cooking. A lot of people will do just slice it lengthwise and then put it in a steamer, let it steam.
Yeah, someone asked earlier, and I forgot to interrupt. I didn't want to interrupt you, but they asked, their oven is broken, and they wondered if they can just steam eggplant. And of course you can. That's
Yes.
what we're doing here. Stir fry is basically steaming. I mean, you're not using water, but
No, and Stir fry is more like using oil and the heat to kind of cook, and then the steam is using the moisture from the vegetable itself to kind of steam itself when you have fleshy vegetables like this. But real stir fry that you see like sometimes street vendor in China, you know, they have a big wok and then just like big fire and then really fast, flash stir fry.
Yeah.
That kept the vegetable very fresh and slightly crunchy but cooked. That's the stir fry that I grew up with. But this is more because I don't have a wok.
I had a wok for a long time and I used it a lot. And I don't have one anymore. I'd like to get another one.
And to cook with a wok, you really need more of a gas stove. It will be the best.
You do need a gas stove.
Heat source.
And the thing is, when you start making this, you don't know exactly how much amount you're going to have. And what I would always do is when I start stirring it, it all winds up out here. So if you have a wok and it has that deep bowl on it, it really keeps the vegetables contained and not on your stove.
So as the eggplant cook, you'll see.
Tony says he used his wok today. Hi, Tony, at Simplified Gardening in Wales. What did you say?
So you see the difference when eggplant is more cooked, it turned into more of a translucent kind of color there at the bottom. And then the white part is when it's still not fully cooked. So you basically shoot for trying to get all the eggplant to be that more uniform color of this grayish beige. Bless you.
This looks like another one of those berry bowls.
Yep, that's another Gabriel's berry bowl.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and add the tomatoes now because it has a lot of moisture and it will help with the steaming process of this dish. And stewing it up. And we were talking about earlier.
You don't have to talk quite so loud.
Oh, sorry.
You're right beside the phone.
We talked about earlier like how I come up with recipes and stuff, and usually it's dictated by what the harvest is for the day. So this dish could evolve itself from day to day. Like if tomorrow we have a bunch of kale that's ready to go, big kale leaves, then this will also have kale leaves in there.
And if you didn't happen to have an eggplant, you could use zucchini.
You can use
Right.
zucchini. Zucchini will cook down even softer than this. Eggplant holds its shape a little better for this type of cooking. But zucchini, you can definitely try that. But the good thing with eggplant is it's such a spongy vegetable. It soaks up all the sauces that you cook it in.
Well, I used to make ratatouille a lot. I had a great ratatouille recipe, but it will soak up so much oil that you could put like a quarter of a cup of oil and it would soak it's a sponge. You said it, it's a sponge.
It's a sponge. So
And you only used a couple of tablespoons for this whole thing. But like you say, right?
a couple of what?
Tablespoons?
Tablespoons
Of oil?
Oil, yeah, yep. The
Right.
oil you see at the beginning, that's all I used.
Right, so what is providing a lot of moisture for this dish is just the vegetables themselves, the
Yes.
fresh vegetables.
Yes, exactly. And I use low heat to cook a lot of times because then you give the vegetable time to release that moisture and steam itself, but not burn. So it's not very exciting, not a lot of sounds, but and a lot of stirring, but you can ensure a pretty good product at the end. And you can see the loofah has also come to a more translucent kind of coloration there, just like the eggplant. And now it's releasing some of its moisture into the dish also.
Tessa is in Paris, and she said she's living in a very dense city. As we all know, Paris is one of the big dense cities of the world. But I have no doubt that in every big city there are a lot of people using whatever space they have to grow their food. I remember when I first connected on my blog, I had a friend who was an American who was a midwife. She was teaching water birth in China. And I'm going to get over here because the sun is in the camera. And she said when she would walk to the hospital each day, she would walk by all these houses that were exactly side by side, but the vegetables would be growing off the roof, off the gutters, down the side of the house. They use every single.
It's really funny because Taiwan is very dense also in the main cities, in Taipei, Taichung, even Pingdong. Pingdong is more like a farming community. That's why the Pingdong eggplant is from there. But in Taipei and Taichung, where it's the main city and high density, you will see the exact same thing. A lot of people will grow on their balconies. So you see people with dragon fruit, you know, hanging from their balcony, and different type of vegetables. There's a very popular method of growing using aquaponic in Taiwan too, where they have a little fish tank at the bottom, and then it siphons the fish tank water up to feed and water the plants above. And then as it goes through the plant's roots, the plants took up the nutrients and kind of filter the water a little bit for the fish. So that's a very common growing method in Taiwan too. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the garlic chive and the hot pepper. You can really smell, I hope you can smell, I wish you can smell the tomatoes from Kaye are really caramelizing here.
Tomatoes are caramelizing?
It's really cooking and adding a really unique smell to this dish.
It's so funny, I'm trying to find this on... We did this so many times, I can't even find the real one on my computer. You can just tell them that I'm just checking comments on...
Kaye is checking comments. Feel free to post your questions and comments on there. She'll respond and see what we can respond back. So now you can see the garlic chive is pretty well incorporated. I'm going to add the sauce mixture. This seems like a lot of sauce, but remember the eggplant is very spongy and it will really reduce the sauce to almost nothing.
So just to reiterate for the people who are tuning in late, that we had all of these technical things that we had all hooked up. Everything was working, and then YouTube would not connect. Or something would not connect to the, yeah. Just go ahead and, I don't know if they can hear me.
Oh, I don't know if I can hear you being so far.
That's what I'm saying, just repeat what I just said.
Oh.
If you don't mind. If you run out of things to say, just tell them that we had a lot of problems and we thank them for their patience.
Yeah, we really thank you for your patience because we tried so hard earlier on to test connections with the mics and the internet, and it seemed to work. And then when we finally set up the scheduled live stream, then it's just crapped out on us. So really apologize for that and making you guys jump through different live streams to get to here. But we're glad you're here to join us. So at this stage, because all the vegetable is coated and they still need about 5 to 10 minutes of time to steam and cook. So I'll put the lid on this and let it stew for 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh, you're moving? Oh, right. Okay. So what we're doing while that's cooking is, go ahead. So Jack is going to show us some of the things that, first of all, let me just show you this amazing, what would we call this? It's an assemblage. It's a rack. That's not a good enough word. It's a utility rack, really,
Yes,
isn't it?
it's I requested Jeremy to build me French Cleat storage for my kitchen and harvests and storage things for anything related to the garden. So we're testing out different ways to store, fun ways to display and store mason jars, because we think all kinds of stuff, you know, the marmalade jam, the pickled caper berries, and the chiltepines, they all look really pretty. So we like to showcase them.
They do when you do it. These are the chiltepin.
Those are chiltepines from our old house.
And this is the, tell them again what the pepper is. That's the natural pepper from Arizona?
That's the native pepper in the Central America, like in Mexico.
Oh, okay.
In the Sonoran Desert. They have not fully been domesticated, so people are harvesting them wild, commercially.
I remember you saying something about somebody bought even green ones from you or something?
There's a gentleman in Washington that will buy green, fresh ones from me so he can eat them fresh. And he got me started eating it. It's very addictive, so I'll eat it with everything.
Well, Jack really likes a lot of hot stuff. This looks like fennel.
No, that's actually lavender. We bought this
I'm sorry.
from Texas.
Of course, yes. And you see each shelf, they've got the different sizes, and they're cut down with the CNC
So these
machine.
are all CNCs.
And then Jack is a designer, so do you actually send him a design in a digital format, and
so
then he?
A lot of these projects, I tell Jeremy what I want, and then he'll go and he's a software architect engineer. So this is his creative outlet. He's not only really good with the left or right side of the brain, he's also really good with the left side of the brain. So he used these projects as his creative outlet. So he come back, we were saying, oh, it would be cool if we have a mason jar tree. But, so this is what he came up with.
Could this just fall out, or is there an indent? Yeah.
So that's why we make it deep enough that it seats quite well back there.
Right.
So unless you really rock this, they won't kind of
come out.
They won't come out.
And this again is the French cleat, right?
Yep, this is French cleat with two stops to hold it on.
You
there.
can show it better if you lift that one up. See, look at
this
this.
one is
Look at this cool basket.
a little basket for the onion storage. And this is just reusing a store display bin attached to a French cleat to repurpose that bin. And this is our
Senora Charco says she loves the basket. I do too. And he was talking about this wood last night.
Yeah, this is
construction grade. Construction grade
This is
birch.
construction grade birch plywood, and this is furniture grade. You can see how this is much finer compared to this more rough textured
Right.
pattern.
Plus, it's the layers are thinner, much thinner, like half the size. Wait a second, you put those in the other day, and they were like the big flower.
Yes, they're the butterfly pea flower.
And
Tropical flower.
do you have one that has the fresh flower, or are they all dried like this
These
already?
are all dried. These are dried for 2 days now. So they started really big, and they fill all these space, and they shrivel up. And Arizona is so dry, I don't even need a dehydrator to blow air or heat. So almost all of our herbs and flowers are air dried. And this is the damask flower,
The
rose
rose
petals.
Yes, the rose you showed us yesterday.
Harvested a lot, and I'll show you just from the one plant.
And then she's got a lot of dried herbs up there. Do you put a moisture packet? I guess it's so dry here you don't have to.
No,
I always feel like I have to put a moisture packet inside my dried herbs.
So this is all the petals. This is from one rose.
Wow.
It filled this whole space, and then it all shriveled down to this.
Okay, that looks time consuming. You took one little rose and you took every petal and laid it out.
Not really. I just like kind of hold onto the rosebud
And just
then,
go.
And then
Connie wants to
spread
know
it
what
out.
you're going to use the rose damask for.
So I love making tea with this. We had a Moroccan rose tea, Moroccan mint rose tea before, and then I researched on edible roses that's used a lot in teas and in distilling the oil. So we found out about the damask rose, and that's why we grow it and dry it. And the scent is just
I'm just going to take it over here where the light is a little bit less yellow so you can see. This is more of a true color. That is absolutely gorgeous. And I think we should have some, well, what kind of tea do you have planned for your meal?
We can have the rose mint tea.
Okay.
And then
And you know, we were talking about capers before, and Jack said, we saw one of the caper plants out there. Hopefully we'll take another tour so you guys can see. This is, tell them if they're not familiar with caper, this is the berry.
this is the berry. So a lot of the caper that people are familiar with eating at restaurants, they're tiny. They're actually the unopened flower buds.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what we think of as capers.
yes.
When we have our salmon and lox and we have
Yeah,
capers,
and they're usually with the caper buds.
that's just the bud of the
But,
flower.
if you're growing caper yourself, you will have the pleasure of seeing the beautiful blooms of caper flower. It just very fairy-like. And then so you enjoy the bloom, and then it will produce these berries, and they're about, this size when they're ready for harvest. So you get a lot more food source from a single flower by waiting for it to form fruit
Right.
instead of harvesting the tiny bud.
Yeah.
And the pickling process for the berries is actually much easier. All I do is equal parts of white vinegar and water, and 2%, to the total weight to make 2% of total weight of salt. And you can use sea salt. I use the Himalayan pink salt, and then just
A fine
marinate.
grind of that.
Fine grind, because you want it to dissolve.
Yeah.
And that is the brine that I use to pickle these. And
Mm-hmm. And how long does it take?
It takes at least 6 weeks.
Oh.
About 6 weeks, it will be. You can start testing it. You do want to harvest before the seed inside get hard and mature. So sometimes it's a game of, trying to judge without cutting it open to see if you get a caper that is